Hi, I'm Lhadon.
I'm Tendor, and welcome to Our Nation.
News and analysis on the state of Tibet. Welcome to episode 10. I'm sorry that I missed you these last few episodes, but Tendor's done a great job. I have been traveling. I'm now in Hong Kong. I came here because it's obviously a really important time for Tibetans. It's now the eve of Losar, Tibetan New Year. It's also the lead up to March 10th and the 50th anniversary of the uprising inside Tibet. And we thought it was important for me to be as close as I could get in the same time zone as Tibetans inside Tibet and China, as well as the media, and of course Hong Kong's the media center of Asia. So I will be working from here for the next while, and actually give you a little view of the Hong Kong harbor
Yes, please.
from my room here. Can you see that?
Yes, we can see the buildings, and we can see some of the ships too.
Yeah.
And
So there it is. It's Hong Kong. Is that clear?
yeah, that was a good view of Hong Kong Harbor. Thanks.
Very good. All right. So Tendor, do you want to tell the people what stories we have?
Yes, today we just have a couple of stories. One about how the Chinese government is forcing Tibetans to celebrate Losar, and we're going to read some of the quotes from a Los Angeles Times article about how China is basically saying, celebrate Losar or else, as a threat. And we're also going to tell you a little bit about someone from Lhasa who made an anonymous phone call to Radio Free Asia and described the situation in Lhasa right now. And Lhadon, you're going to talk about...
Yeah, I gather there was a protest in Nakchu. We got this from High Peaks Pure Earth, the incredible blog that translates Tibetan and Chinese into English. And I gather this was a comment left on Wuse's blog, Wuse being the Tibetan incredible writer and poet who lives in Beijing and is like our only source of news and information often from Tibet. This was a comment left on February 19th, and it just illustrates how tense the situation is inside Tibet. It talks about in central Tibet in the town of Nakchu, where there was it's basically a conflict between a Tibetan taxi driver and a Chinese taxi driver. The police intervened, and they, as very normal in Tibet, they sided with the Chinese driver, and so it turned into a full-scale fight. And then lots of Tibetans came and tried to reason with the police who were taking away the Tibetan, and I gather somebody shouted loudly in Tibetan, "Drive away the Chinese, return the land to us, and hope the Dalai Lama will come back to uphold justice," and other slogans. And then all the Tibetans started to shout slogans, and there was a conflict, and a few traffic police cars were overturned and burned, and people from both sides were seriously injured. It's hard to know exactly what happened, but this reliable source from inside Tibet is saying that at least 17, maybe 21 Tibetans were detained, and those who were leading the protests were arrested. I guess armed police even fired shots into the air, although some claim that 3 Tibetans were shot, but we just don't know. I think what it does do, though, is just gives you a sense of how everywhere, all across Tibet, the situation is just so tense, and everybody's on edge, and even the simplest sort of daily conflict or clash could turn into a full-scale protest.
So as you can gather from this incident, there is a lot of tension in Tibet right now. And here is an article from the LA Times written by Barbara Demick, and the title goes, "China expects Tibet to celebrate or else." And this is clearly a threat to the Tibetans to celebrate Losar, which is the Tibetan New Year, and it's actually tomorrow. So today is the eve of the Tibetan New Year. And we already told you in the past days about how instead of the usual celebrations marked by singing, dancing, and other festivities, silence will be observed this Tibetan New Year, and butter lamps will be lit in temples and homes to pray for the deceased, referring to the hundreds of Tibetans who have been killed in last year's crackdown.
At least hundreds.
At least, yes. And the article goes on to say that the tactic appears to be driving the Chinese authorities crazy. They are countering with their own campaign of forced merriment, organizing concerts, pageants, fireworks, horse races, archery competitions. They have declared a one-week public holiday beginning today in Tibet and are offering free admission to museums and parks. It's really bizarre. And the Communist Party in Tibet also gave vouchers worth $120 each to 37,000 low-income families to shop for the holidays. And to further tempt the 2.8 million Tibetans, this is the number referring to the Tibetans who live inside Tibet Autonomous Region, I guess, state television will broadcast a 4-hour gala with 800 performers Tuesday night.
It's interesting, there's a bit of news in here that at Beijing Central University for Nationalities, Tibetan students who applied for last year for permission to hold a Losar or New Year's celebration tried to inform the university recently that they wanted to cancel, and according to this LA Times article, the university told them the party must go on, said a university source who asked not to be quoted. And he goes on to say, they said celebrating is compulsory. So you can get a sense of just how seriously the authorities are taking this No Losar celebration movement and how they're trying to force Tibetans, twist their arms, hand out free firecrackers, give people money to try and make them protest. And we've heard from Tibetans inside that they've been called to meetings and told they must celebrate, and that even though they don't want to in their hearts, they may be appearing on TV and stuff because, or in the public because they're forced to.
That's required of them to do. And in fact, one of those Tibetans actually, anonymously called from Lhasa the other day to talk with Radio Free Asia, and on the radio, he said some things that really reflect the situation in Lhasa right now. And of course, it applies to all of Tibet. And to read from some of the quotes that this man gave on Friday while speaking to Radio Free Asia, he's saying, the situation here is getting more critical every day. In Pakor area, the entire area is packed with soldiers as Losar and March 10th approach. Walking about town is a very fear-inducing experience. And he actually, he was a witness on February 10th at 7 p.m. when the police picked up 5 students randomly for no particular reason. And he says, I saw with my own eyes 5 students arrested by soldiers for no particular reason. The students were 20-somethings and they were all male. And he goes on to say that in the Ramuche temple area, there were lots of soldiers. Usually the Chokang area is packed with pilgrims prostrating in the front of the temple, but nowadays, because of the huge military presence, there's barely anyone doing the prostrations at the Chokang. So this is how it's affecting the pilgrims and everyone.
And if you remember last year, of course, Ramuche Temple was where the real flashpoint occurred on March 14th, where the monks were set upon by the Chinese security forces, and the local people, the lay people around watching, ended up jumping in and getting involved, and that's kind of where everything spiraled out of control in Lhasa. So there's also, we've heard a couple reports of Tibetans wearing black masks, mouth covers, right, like the dust and whatever mask that people wear, that as a symbolic display to show they've no freedom of speech, they've been wearing black ones. But then now we're hearing from the same eyewitness that now, of course, if you wear a black mask, the authorities have figured it out and your people are being arrested. We've also heard this incredible show of solidarity from the Uyghur people of East Turkestan, or what China calls Xinjiang, and they occupy this territory to the north of Tibet. This eyewitness said not just Tibetans but also Uyghurs are being repressed heavily in Tibet. These Uyghurs, when interacting or doing business with Tibetans, are asking us not to speak Chinese to them, that they would rather speak Tibetan with us. This has been a good source of a lesson and inspiration to the Tibetans. Anyway, okay, that's it from Hong Kong, where it's 10 a.m. on the eve of Losar.
And we'll bring you more tomorrow. And this is Our Nation, news and analysis.
News and analysis on the state of Tibet.